Welcome to Your Ink Story, a podcast exploring what humans have in common through the stories behind the body art folks wear. I'm your host, Ande Lyons, and I hope these INKspirational short stories, sharing the heart behind tattoos, fascinate you and leave you feeling more meaningfully connected to humanity. This is Season 1, Episode 12, and our guest, Eliza Foltz, takes us on a journey of personal growth, recovery, and the transformative power of tattoos. The beautiful body art covering Eliza's right arm serves as a visual representation of her recovery journey, and her INKspirational stories are a beacon of hope to all who have experienced addiction or have witnessed its devastating effects on loved ones. Welcome to Your Ink Story, Eliza. I'm so delighted you're here to share your ink story. Please let folks know how you glow in the world.
Hi, my name's Eliza. I live in the Boston area in the suburbs, actually in Dover. Which is like very close. I just learned. I knew Ande was in my kind of neck of the woods, but didn't know exactly where. I am in recovery myself, which is a massive piece of the story behind my art and why it looks a certain way and kind of how it's evolved over the years. I will celebrate 4 years on October 16th. I had a absolutely crippling story being in and out of treatment for opioid addiction. I got an injury playing ice hockey, was prescribed OxyContin, very quickly became dependent and was in and out of treatment for 15 years. It ended, fortunately, when I got pregnant with my daughter. My husband and I realized that, it was now or never. I had given up on my life, but I wasn't willing to give up on my daughter. And so that was what did it. And it was just an absolute miracle. I don't know how to explain any other way, because usually I would never recommend to anybody that they get pregnant as a means of getting in recovery, because if it backfires in a major, major way that affects a lot of people. But it was honestly like the universe doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, clearly. And now I work for a company called Preda, and it is a company that elevates and measures treatment outcomes in the SUD and mental health space. So we partner with treatment centers, and we use a combination of self-report, clinically validated assessments, as well as biometrics from non-stigmatizing wearables. For example, Google Fitbit is a strategic partner of ours, and we marry up the biometrics with the self-report to not only accurately measure how people are doing after treatment, but also keeping people connected to treatment, so that if they do begin to slip, our biometrics identify that. We inform treatment providers, and they're able to reach back out and get people help before the slip becomes a fall.
Oh my gosh. Folks, I'll have all the links to Eliza's wonderful work in the world. And I'd love to do a little shout out to the gentleman who introduced us, the wonderful Kevin Hyer, Hyer, founder of the Hyer Foundation, which is helping folks in recovery. And I will have a link to his wonderful organization as well. Eliza, so Kevin introduced us because he knew that you had some meaningful ink stories on your body, and you sent me some wonderful photos of them. Please share with everyone what I like to call your tattoo origin story. What originally inspired you to permanently ink it on your body, and why that first image was so meaningful to you?
So I have sort of a funny story, because I think what I was looking for, and I got tattooed very young in Canada with a fake note from my parents and a fake ID. So I'd love to say that my first tattoo was like massively meaningful. And I look back on it and it's way more meaningful than I realize, for a few reasons. One, I don't think I would have gotten the rest of my art over the years had I not kind of like broken the seal, as it were, with that first one. But really, I look back and I think that tattoos did something for me from an early age, where what I was looking for was an identity. I was looking for something to make me whole, a way to express myself. I grew up in a very conservative family. Like both my parents, worked on Wall Street, and my brother's like this perfect specimen who went to Harvard and went to Stanford Business School. And I played ice hockey at Brown and did well in school, but I never felt like that was who I was. I always felt like I didn't quite fit into that hole that was in the family that I was designed to fit into. So what I was looking for initially when I started getting tattoos was a way to express myself, and honestly, a way to express my autonomy. Now, over the years, as I started collecting tattoos, especially before I was in recovery, I think my parents were horrified. I come from a very conservative part of the world. And now it's late September. So over the summer, when I was walking with the baby, and I'm from Dover, I'm in a tank top, people would look at me like I had 3 heads, like, oh my God, who's this imposter? What's she doing here in our town? But I don't feel weird ever. I don't feel like the other. I think my husband, who has a lot of tattoos, does feel a little bit more separate from because of them. But for me, they're such a big part now of who I am, and I've collected them over the years.
What did that first tattoo that you got without proper permission, which is almost every story we have here, right, listeners? We hear that all the time. Basement tattoos, things like that. What was your first tattoo? What did it look like?
Okay, so it was a butterfly. Oh, and a big part of my story was not just substance use disorder. I also had intimacy disorders. They're more commonly known as sex and love addiction. So I was always looking for, when I didn't have substances, for a man to make me whole, or a relationship. So I was young, and I had my boyfriend at the time's initial in the center of the butterfly, and it was a butterfly on my lower back, what we love to refer to as a tramp stamp. And now it's funny because the initial's been covered up by this body, and I've put flowers on the side, which has made it honestly in some ways even more basic. But I've never once thought of getting it removed because it's such an evolution for me from that to kind of where I am now, because everything that's been in recovery or right before recovery is on my right arm. So I have stuff on my foot that's pre-recovery on my side, but the most meaningful tattoos to me are on my right arm, and all but one have been when I've been in recovery, and they've been this really massively cool evolution of things that mean something to me.
And of course, you have been evolving in so many magnificent ways, and every step that you had to take to get where you are today is a milestone. It's a stepping stone. It's significant. And so that you started off with the butterfly, and you're so transparent about your search for love in all the wrong places, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Many women and men can speak to that as well, because of not getting that unconditional love as children, right?
Yeah.
And so many of our challenges as adults come through the gateway of the challenges we had as children, of all types of abuses that leave us feeling unworthy, insecure, and seeking what we can't seem to fill inside ourselves. And so you're starting off with that beautiful butterfly, and the fact that you're I'm not going to change. I might add to it. I might get those initials fixed up, et cetera. But it was such an important step for you. And the fact that you went and you got it. Did your parents see it right away? What happened?
No, not for years, because the choice was strategic, because it's easy to cover, right? And then by the time, I think I was 18 or something by the time they saw it. So it wasn't the end of the world. But what I can say is my family, as I have, and I am, as you mentioned, very transparent. I'm very transparent on LinkedIn. I'm very transparent about what it was like using during my first pregnancy and how hard it was to stop, but how important it was. But there's so much shame that goes along with that, because as women, we're trained to be this is what being a mother looks like. And if you do that, you're a bad mother. You're a bad person. I would never do that. But unless you're in that position, you can't say that you would never do that, because my guess
Oh,
is you
please.
probably would.
Don't get me started
Yeah.
on the shaming that especially women do to each other, as if we were supposed to get a memo that says, this is how it's done, period, end of story. My parents' generation, most of them were drinking cocktails and smoking cigarettes.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And then we love to mudsling at each other. But, the reality is and is that, like, we don't know what we would do in those circumstances. And it's really, as much as we want to say we wouldn't, we probably would, because people do the best with what they have. I really, really believe that people absolutely do the best with what they have. But as I've progressed in recovery and my identity and become a lot more established and this is who I am, my parents have become, I don't know if my mom especially will ever be like supportive of my tattoos and be like, what are you going to get next? Like, this is so great. But she absolutely will not comment on them anymore. And she's fine with it. Like, she's like, this is your choice. This is your world. You work in recovery. This is who you are. And I think my dad looks at it with like mild amusement now. I think he's totally cool with it, which he never thought that he ever would be. He said he looks at it now and he never judges it. And this is just who Eliza is.
We need to expand people's
Yeah.
expectations in life and help them understand. And listeners, please let us know. Did you get comments and side glances or the horrified mother, what did you do to your precious, beautiful skin and body comments? Let us know, either wherever you're tuning in, leave a comment, let us know, or over on Instagram at Tell Me Your Ink Story. We want to know what happened in your life when you showed, because we know from episode 8 with Christian, he is 18. He was like, I'm getting it on my neck. And the tattoo artist was like, say what? Are you sure? And he was like, absolutely. And it was respect on his neck. And others have stories about when they came home with that first tattoo. And even the most progressive of parents were just horrified. And it is that indoctrination that the older generations have about the stigma, Eliza, that means that, oh, if you're doing that, you're part of a gang, or you're sketchy, or you may as well just be living off the streets. Just terrible connotations. And listeners, you know that 30 to 40% of millennials have tattoos. So tattoos are not going anywhere. They're just getting better. Talk about the next step of your tattoo journey. Where did you go next, and what did it mean to you?
So I had a series of tattoos that I would stick in the bucket of identity seeking, where it wasn't horribly thought out. It was like, I want to do something. I'm feeling rebellious. I'm feeling insecure. I want to make myself feel differently, which has been a massive theme in my life. And I got a dragon on my foot, and I got a seahorse on my hip. And I don't know why I got either of those. I mean, they're cute little animals. It's fine. It's cool. The dragon's not scary. It's like this adorable little sleeping dragon in my arch.
And you were still playing it safe, hip, foot.
Easy to cover up.
So nobody at Brown was going to comment on it unless you're in the locker room with your hockey players.
That's right. So no one really thought anything of it. And then, like I said, it was my arm that really started kind of changing things for me. I got a lotus on my rib cage, which, lotuses there's a lot of symbolism with recovery. There's a Fleetwood Mac quote above it that says, when the rain washes you clean, you'll know, which is all about recovery as well.
Please share why the lotus is important with recovery.
Because it grows up out of the mud. So it's a beautiful, like, rare prized flower that just shows that, beautiful things can come from these dark, messy, dirty places. And
it can be both. You can have the dark and the light at the same time.
Yeah. And so I like that. I like both of those. Although
and you're fond of Fleetwood Mac, or the quote just happened to be?
I'm fond of Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks. And I like the quote. And then the one that really started changing and being recovery tattoos was the little caterpillar on my wrist. And I got this when I left treatment. I went to a long-term treatment facility for 4 months, and then I went to sober living for 2 months. And I really wanted to be done. And that's when I got this little caterpillar. And it's from a book called Hope for the Flowers. And it's about this story of these two caterpillars named Yellow and Stripe. And they are exploring the world together, and they keep seeing all these caterpillars climbing this tower. And they ask the other caterpillars, why are we doing this? And it's a symbol for people living in this world where they don't know why they're doing the things that they're doing. And it's like this rat race, and nobody can
Eliza,
answer it.
you're not going to believe this, but I bought that book in 1974. Hope for the Flowers.
Nobody has that book. That's bizarre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had left home when I was 18. I know that they're all crawling up this tower.
Yeah.
They don't know they're going to be going to a chrysalis and become a.
Yep. And then Yellow finally, Stripe is really afraid. Yellow becomes a butterfly. Stripe's really afraid. I have Stripe on my wrist, and Stripe resists and resists and resists till the end. And it's like, well, I don't want to do this because I don't know what's on the other side. And I don't want to go through this period of darkness if I don't know what's on the other side. And ultimately his friend does it first and persuades him that it's okay. And then he becomes a butterfly. And it's called Hope for the Flowers because then like butterflies pollinate the flowers and fill the world with beauty.
Oh my gosh. So now you've got a very significant tattoo to remind you that these dark days are worth crawling through because the other side will be better.
And about a year ago, 3 years into recovery, I got Yellow next to him as a butterfly.
Oh,
there's a little stripe in Yellow. And then above it, I have one for my daughter, which is she loves frogs. And we used to go strawberry picking a lot during COVID when we had to be outside anyway. So it's magical frog. He's wearing, it's just a frog with like a wand and a kind of like a wizard cap, riding a giant strawberry because she's kind of like this mystical little sprite anyway. And then I have a jackalope on the front for my son, Jack. Oh, and then I have, I don't know if you've seen, this is sort of a silly one, but the movie Mario Brother, like the Mario Party, Mario Kart, whatever the movie was recently where there's the little Lumily. It's like this nihilistic, the name's escaping me, but it's very recent, came out in 2023.
Yeah. Right.
And there's this little nihilistic baby star.
Like the turquoise.
That's locked up in the cage. And it's like, oh, sweet death, like that thing. So it's just this really funny way to look at the world where he wants to like build community and talk to people and all until the very end. And he's not afraid to see what's on the other side. So I have Lumily.
And then there's something with tentacles. What's that?
The octopus. So the last treatment center I ever went to was Borden Cottage. And when I was there, I had been scared to draw or express my creativity my whole life because I was good at sports. So like I was an athlete and I wasn't creative because I was good at writing, but I wasn't good at art. Like this was just the stories that I told myself based on something I probably heard once. And so at Borden, they had this really beautiful art room that was really peaceful. And the sun would come through and it was all white walls and it was really quiet. And so I would go over there and just draw. And so I drew this octopus. I was reading a book called The Soul of the Octopus, which is like a massively interesting book. It's about octopuses and how their brains work and their social behaviors. And
we can't eat anything that has to do with octopus.
No, I stopped. I used to eat octopus sushi and I won't do it anymore because they're so cool. They're amazing. So I drew an octopus and then I really liked the way it looked. So I just kept adding to it. So it's an octopus. It has carrying a top hat. It has a key and it has a flat bouquet of flowers and a teapot, sort of like Alice in Wonderland meets an octopus. So years later, I got that put on my arm and my arms all happened fairly quickly. So I've had at least one appointment a month for probably the last year.
Oh my gosh.
And I have another appointment in like 2 weeks and I'm doing the Dover Demon because I really like cryptids. I think they're really cool that people are so convinced that these things exist. And the Dover Demon is out of Dover, Massachusetts on Farm Street. My dad lives on Farm Street. Someone swore they saw it in the 70s. So I'm getting like a non-scary version of it because I have a little kid.
Oh my gosh, the Dover Demon. I love that. A little spooky going on down there in the Doverville.
I got to fill up the space. So now I'm looking for small things. And then I've waited, I'm putting the dates that are meaningful, like my wedding anniversary, which was yesterday, my recovery date, my daughter's birthday, my son's birthday, my husband's sobriety date. So all of that are going to go on my arm in conversation hearts. So they're going to be like little conversation hearts, like the Valentine's Day candies.
Yeah.
Has some kind of scary stuff. So it makes it a little bit more playful. And even the scary stuff, like,
What's scary though?
I have
Really?
Hansel and Gretel's house, but it's like a cross between Hansel and Gretel and Baba Yaga. So it's on the chicken feet. And if you look, there's a child's handprint on the window, but it's so subtle that you can't see it. It has to be pointed out to you, which was purposeful.
I love that. I'm going to take a deeper gander at that. And listeners, be sure to hop on over to Instagram so you can see some of these images, these beautiful, beautiful tattoos that Eliza has on her body. Some that are meaningful, some that are quirky and whimsical, but they have a purpose for your heart, for your expression, for what you want on your body. And please tell us, have you used several tattoo artists, or do you have a favorite that you love using and go to for all your images?
So I've used several over the years, but over the last year, I've seen one person only, and I will only see one person for the rest of my life. That person works at Said and Done Tattoo, which is in Jamaica Plain. I love that tattoo shop because I have like it's so funny. I am very stoic with pain. Like I could have a C-section tomorrow and not be afraid. But tattoos, like after maybe an hour and a half, I've kind of like had enough. So I do some in multiple sessions, which some people that's very against old school tattoo culture. You need to have the pain. You need to sit it out.
Part of the process.
You need to sit there for 4 hours. And KJ, who I work with, is like, Eliza, stay as long as you want to. You see me every 2 weeks. We're cool. There's no point in you being miserable and me being miserable. We're going to just start with this for today. If you want to do more, we'll do more. And then the other thing I love about KJ is because anytime I've spent many, many hours in their chair, and they are non-binary and have this amazing story and had a top surgery recently and have really expanded the way that I think about gender and fluidity and sexuality, and in a very gentle and lead by example type of way. And it's just been like this very mind altering, beautiful friendship where if they disagree with me on something, it's extremely gentle. And this is why I think this way. And it's just been an ability and an opportunity rather for me to really kind of think about some of the things that I thought I knew or that I believed. And I've never been somebody who's bigoted or biased, but even some things that I subtly thought I knew, I've been very gently challenged on, and it's been just such a wonderful experience. And KJ is one of my absolute dearest friends now, and my husband sees Dylan there, who's
That's
Time
wonderful.
Boy. Yeah.
I'll have the links to follow Said and Done as well as KJ in the show notes. And I really see that your relationship with KJ, we get indoctrinated. We even think that we are just fine and open and we understand. And then we find, whoa, I thought I knew, but I didn't. And now I understand what listening means and understanding and compassion and how I can best help and be an ally. Listeners, in episode 10, our guest talks about how he transitioned at the age of 38 as a mom to boys and what that was like. He's 60 years old today, but the tattoos in his ink story, Eliza, you'd love because
that was a different time too. Different time, 20 years
very
ago.
different time, and 3 boys right there with him all the way, and a wonderful woman who he fell in love with right before he began the transition, and they've been together ever since. So there are love stories abound with tattoo and body art. And your darling man, he has some wonderful body art. And listeners, you'll see this on Instagram in the artwork. Tell us just a little bit about his ink stories.
He's the best and the kindest, just nicest, best person I know. there's a well-known stereotype in the recovery community that if you meet someone in treatment, it likely will not work. Not true for us. We are the 1 in 1,000 that actually worked. And I know some other people that it did work for, but I also, there's a lot of times that it doesn't end so well.
Right.
For us, it was magical and completely changed our lives in so many ways. And so he's also, as I mentioned, in recovery, and he has been getting tattooed for a long time, since he was, I think, 20. And then he loves horror movies and he loves music. So he has one limb, it's his leg, that is music. He has one leg that's horror themed. And then he has a lot of tributes to our kiddos and to us. And
congratulations. I'm so happy. And I'm so thrilled that you have such a great life partner. Because
I'm very lucky. Very, very lucky.
It's the best to be loved unconditionally and have someone at your back like that, right? Who's your wingman or wingwoman and who is there to help you navigate this challenging life. And also, Eliza, I think you have just been the best gift to your family, having grown up in a very waspy household myself.
Yes.
Someone's got to be the gift that keeps on giving, as far as opening up everyone's minds and not being perfect country club and educated children who always do the right thing according to some standards or norms. It's great to be that person who helps the family evolve into being better, more compassionate and empathetic folks.
I think everyone in my family would agree that while it was not so fun at the time for them, that we're all the better for what we experienced. Honestly, like, addiction was a gift in my life. Certainly, I wouldn't have the husband I have. I wouldn't have my kids. I wouldn't have the job I have. I wouldn't have, like,
you wouldn't be serving the world.
None of it.
You wouldn't be serving the world in such a meaningful, significant way if you hadn't had to go to all those places yourself.
Yeah.
The dark side, the light side, all of the messiness. And I really appreciate the gift of your being in recovery and the daily commitment to that and the representation you bring as a mom of 2 young children, as a woman, and also in an endearing relationship with a wonderful person who is there with you and for you all the way. And that representation is so important to folks who don't think they'll ever get to that other side, while honoring the fact that it was a horrific time when you were in the addictions.
Yeah, the best. I mean, I never in a million years thought I would be grateful for all those experiences that I had. Because at the time, I mean, oh my gosh, I can't even, the hopeless, I had completely given up at the time I got pregnant.
Yeah.
But wow, I mean, the life we have now, I don't know that I would have even achieved it if I hadn't.
Right.
So.
Right. And the work you're doing now and your ability to talk to others and your transparency and authenticity about being able to just be like, there I am, there I was, and here I am today. Still, that person didn't disappear. They're still part of the fabric and the landscape of my life. I just know how to navigate it.
There's so much stigma around addiction still, and it's so unfair and so ridiculous. And in some ways, we think we're so progressive as a society, but how can we look at addiction as a disease, which we know that it is, with medical backing and research, and then still treat people the way that we do and criminalize addiction? It's mind-boggling to me. And my theory on it, if I'm not transparent about it, being in the position that I'm in with the platform I have, who's going to be?
Right. And that's why we appreciate what Kevin Heyer is doing as well, because this was a man, listeners, who at the age late in his 30s, right, had just been a fine stand-up guy forever, a professional, an attorney, and then boom, it was an immediate addiction for him. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about addiction, is that sometimes it is your body grabs it and it is holding on. This is not something easy to just say, oh, I need my willpower.
No, and the people that see videos of Kensington and Mass and Cass in Massachusetts want to say, oh, that would never be me. Do you think people choose that life? I could go on and on about
yes,
this.
we could.
Nobody would ever choose that life. And you say that could never be you, but we're one trauma, one bad emotional trauma or psychological trauma, or one surgery away from that. And that
absolutely
could be you.
100%. I've lived many decades and have had many challenges in my own life to know that and understand, have deep compassion and empathy for the fragility of being human. And we need to have a lot more empathy and compassion for each other in that regard. Eliza, oh my gosh, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Listeners, are you feeling as inspired as I am from this conversation? Please hop on over to Instagram. Let us know what you're feeling. The handle is at Tell Me Your Ink Story, or wherever you're tuning in. Feel free to drop your thoughts and feelings in the comments, and be sure to connect with Eliza. All her information will be in the show notes. Eliza, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful ink stories with us. I'm so grateful for your inspirational insights about the art of tattoos and the heart behind your tattoos. You've helped us connect more deeply with each other and given us an actual deeper understanding of humanity and how we're all trying to navigate this one precious life that we have. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It was pure deliciousness. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Ink Story. Please rate and review this podcast wherever you are tuning in. And if this episode inspired you, please share it so we can all feel more connected through our common humanity and lived experiences. If you or someone you know would like to share a meaningful ink story on the podcast, please send me an email, ande@yourinkstory.com, along with a brief description. Feel free to share your thoughts about this episode via a voicemail message by visiting yourinkstory.com. And when you get to the website, just tap the podcast mic icon located in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and leave your message. Until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers.